This is Tracy Lewis with Stuff and Things with part 2 of comparing the new basic white to Stampin' Up's retired Whisper White. Today I'm going to do a quick retest with water. That'll be up in the beginning, and then we'll move on to stamping.
Hey, I want to revisit the water test and do one more time where you're watching, since it actually happened on accident and I thought it had a good result, providing me with more information. So I've got my water here, and I'm gonna sprinkle and get things wet. Whoops, that was too wet. Okay, so even though I got the Whisper White way too wet, here, let's make it even. I'm immediately noticing that there's a finish on the basic white that does not allow the soaking in of the water. So this is interesting for how the blends may possibly work. And so we will chalk this away as information and continue on with more tests. And we'll see if we can determine how the water soaking into the Whisper White versus not soaking into the basic white will affect us when we do our coloring. So I thought that would be fun to do and show you guys what it looked like. And let's dry off my grid paper here. All right. I am going to let these pages dry and we will look at them later. None of them have a really thick edge or a silhouette aspect to any of the stamps, so I'm going to grab a stamp set that will give us a good test of a silhouette solid stamp. I am going to use the strawberry and the leaf. This stamp set is from the mini catalog, so it is not in the annual catalog, but it runs through 6/30 and it could be carried over. I won't know until much closer to the expiration date. Alright, so I have a clean Whisper White and a clean basic white. I'm going to pause for a moment and come back and do some stamping. Alright, I went ahead and added one more stamp for my testing. I added this flower from Lovely You, which is carrying over to the next catalog. It is a solid stamp. The strawberry, when I pulled it out, see how it has darks and lights? It is like a distinctive style pixelated stamp. And then we have the coloring stamp. And I'm going to stamp with all these colors on both papers, and then we'll see what the differences are between them. Alright, I've inked up our chick, which is the coloring stamp. I'm going to do one with blends coloring, and I will stamp a second chick for the watercolor pencil. This is the one time where having full-size pads would not be a bad thing. Alright, so far, this is the black. I did add some actual light to try to help us see a little better than the natural light that I like to use. It's actually a cloudy day, so this is a light I've put up. And I think they both look pretty good. This looks a little bit grayer, but they both look nice and crisp. All right. Now, I have to grab my chamois. Just one sec. I will be back. All right, I'm moving on to do a navy ink test. All right, that's the navy. Those look good. I don't want to mix up my lids. So a trick with using the spots, this is kind of a tip that I've used more than once. I always put the base color with a labeler because you can't really tell when the lids are off. It's really hard to make a judgment call. Now this looks bluish to me, but I don't want to have to work that hard to tell. So instead I use the very smallest label and the base gets a color designation so that I don't mess it up. I've already had that happen many times early on when using this technique. Now just for fun, I think I'm going to do a light ink line stamp just to see how they handle the light. We'll do soft seafoam. All right, so there's the light, there's the navy, and there's the black. Okay, I'm gonna flip these over and stamp. We'll use the strawberry. This could be upside down gumdrops, I suppose. I'm going to stamp one more. I'm seeing too many lines, and I think that's me. In order to try to eliminate those lines, I am tapping very lightly, moving around, and then I look at the stamp and try to make sure there aren't any lines like that. That's much better. Yeah, so this is my fault. We can't blame that on the paper. All right, now let's move on to the flower. Starting with the black. All right. So those are my test solids. I'm looking, and the only thing I noticed is that the pink, and this is where it could be human error, I might not have inked right here as well as I inked how solid this is on this side. But I would say overall, they seem to stamp, accept a stamp ink similarly for all of the tests. So I am going to go away now and prepare for coloring. And it's possible that I will only do one coloring today and save the we'll save the blends coloring for last. I will pull out the watercolor pencils, and I will use a blender pen, which should be floating around here somewhere. So let me get everything ready and we will move on to the next test. All right, I got out my blender pen. I brought a water painter for a water blender and just grabbed for some softs and some brights. And I'm going to color this guy. We'll color two of them, and we'll use the different blenders, one on each, and then save. Maybe we'll do the navy with the blends marker. And I will probably have all of this sped up, so you may or may not hear me talking. We will take our blender pen, make sure it's clean. So I'm working this quite a bit, and I do know the limits of Whisper White with this blender pen, and I'm really pushing the boundaries of it right now. So that's blended with the blender pen, and I'm going to let that dry. And we will come over here and do the same thing. The paper feels a little different already with how it accepts the pencil. There's a little bit less drag over here, which means that even though they both feel very smooth, this basic white is actually even smoother than the Whisper White, because the pencil, you'll see it's gliding along the surface and it's not leaving a lot of color, and that is because this paper is so smooth. So it's taking me a lot more work because I don't want to push hard. In fact, I pushed a little bit hard right here where you see a couple of lines, and my goal when I use colored pencils is to not have any lines. I don't want it to look like a crayon drawing. I want to make it look really smooth, and I use the blender to smooth out any of the imperfections and to push the color around a little bit like you do with watercolor, using the liquid to push the color. So I'm going to come back down here, and I'm just continuing with this. I have to work a little harder. I'm doing soft circular motions to really try to get the pencil's ink to adhere to the paper. See, now I'm pushing harder. So This is going to take a little work, I think, to get to know the paper. Because it either goes on really light, and when I push a little bit harder, I see the swirls. Okay, so let's see what happens. When I play with the blender now. Notice I'm trying to get his underbelly darker because it is being shaded by the rest of his body. Let's see what we've got here. Now I don't want to smear the water that's already blue up into this lighter area, so I cleaned it off. See, I'm getting rid of the blue because I want this up here to be lighter. There we go. That actually is a nice feeling paper. So I am going to say that I was able to get on the basic white the blue to be more vivid and darker than I could get with the Whisper White. The Whisper White is bumpy because the water has raised up the paper, and this feels smooth. So we're going to let that dry, and we're going to move on to the next one. Alright, so that is with water. That looks okay. We're going to let that dry and move on. Alright, yeah, that did a nice job. I like that. Now let's add a little water. I feel like I can push the water around, which moves the color very nicely. And that is what they look like. I really feel that this paper so far feels really good. A little harder to get the color on the pencils because of the toothiness, but I like how it looks blended. And that is all I'm going to do for now, because I'm going to save the blends for another day. And I want to do a quick walkthrough, as I promised, of a couple of projects that I've made with the two chicks. Actually, the two projects that I have to share were done using the Hey Birthday Chick, because I just got the Hey Chick set back. And the one I will share is a fun one. I haven't analyzed the paper elements and the parts and pieces for which are retiring and which are not. So this is a fun card. made at a virtual crafting day with Libby and Jane. And the In Good Taste DSP is the wood grain, this wood grain, and then the hexagon tiles. The fine art trim, those are carrying over. The fine art trim is carrying over. The linen trim is carrying over. The snailed it hearts are good through 6:30 for sure. The white embossing, which is the Let's Celebrate on the wood grain, is now sold in a basic pack. White, silver, and white, black, and clear, instead of sold solo. So if you want white or any embossing powders as singles, you'll need to get them before the end of the month. The subtle embossing folder, sadly, is retiring. The color, this paper is Honeybee. And the Balmy Blue is carrying over. The hatchings behind that stamp set is playing with patterns. No, Pattern Play. Sorry, I keep messing up the DSP name. So it's called Pattern Play, and it is retiring. These two little clouds I will have to dig up, and I will post in the video. I grabbed those. I like to look for dies through the catalog, and I found them, but I didn't make note of what they were, and this card was made a couple weeks ago. And the Happy Birthday is part of the Hey Birthday Chick set, and the Hey Birthday Chick set is in the mini catalog through June, and I have to look to see if it's in the annual catalog. And I went ahead, there's these confettis, and I stamped the inside with the confetti, and the envelope has confetti on it to finish it off. So this is my fun project made. I have the second one, totally different than this. Love this stamp set. I colored this, it's a rooster, and it's just using real red light, a light, so saffron on the beak, and smoky slate light, just to emphasize his gray, but he's really a white rooster. All right, that's all I've got. Please leave your questions, comments, and suggestions on my blog or over on the article that I will have. If you have any tests that you can think of for me to do this week, my last video will have blends as well as any other tests that come up. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and be sure to hit the notification bell so you're notified when I drop new videos. And thanks for watching. Alright, I promised you guys that I would revisit these two heavily doused cardstock pieces after they dried, and they actually took quite a while to dry. I finally ended up using a heat gun to get them dry, and I'm just showing you kind of the warping that happened between the basic, this is the basic white. Here, let's switch it because we've been doing mostly the Whisper White on the left. And the basic white really handles water nicely. It did some buckling, but you're not getting this really mottled, rough, fibrous looking area like you get with the Whisper White. And then you do get the water drop locations, like here's a single drop, and here are some smaller drops, as well as where I got too much water on it. So I just like the way the basic white handles water in abundance. So I believe that I am now going to be able to take some of my water projects that I would go right to watercolor paper, and if the stamping is very small, I will feel way more comfortable applying water using the basic white. So I think that the basic white is a win-win on the water test.